Born Elizabeth Angela Marguerite Bowes-Lyon on the 4th of August 1900 in London, she was the ninth child of 10 children born to Claude Bowes-Lyon, the 14th Earl of Strathmore and Kinghorn, and Cecilia Cavendish Bentinck. She grew up in Glamis Castle and was educated by a governess. She started going to school at the age of 8 in London and passed her Oxford local examination at the age of 13. On her 14th birthday, Britain went to war with Germany. 4 of her older brothers served in the army. Her brother Fergus died while fighting in the Battle of Loos in 1915. Her other brother Michael was detained in a prisoner of war camp until the end of the war. Glamis Castle became a convalescent home for wounded soldiers during the war, and Elizabeth helped run it. During her early 20s, Elizabeth grew close to Prince Albert Bertie, Duke of York, and he proposed to her in 1921. However, she rejected the proposal as she did not want to lose her freedom. Queen Mary, Bertie's mother, met Elizabeth and was convinced that Elizabeth was the one who would make her son happy. Bertie proposed a further 2 times, in 1922 and 1923. In 1923, Elizabeth agreed to marry Bertie, and they were married on the 26th of April 1923 in Westminster Abbey. Elizabeth began the tradition of leaving her wedding bouquet at the tomb of the unknown warrior, a tradition still continued amongst royal brides today. After their wedding, they honeymooned in Pollenstone Lacey, a manor house in Surrey, before going to Scotland where she got whooping cough. Elizabeth had a charismatic aura about her and did well on international and national tours. Her husband had quite a bad stammer, which affected his confidence and ability to do speeches, a necessity for his job. She found a speech and language therapist, Lionel Logue, to help him. In 1926, the couple's first child, Princess Elizabeth, was born. Their second child, Princess Margaret, was born in 1930. On the 20th of January 1936, Bertie's father, George V, died, and Edward, the Prince of Wales, became Edward VIII. After only 11 months, Edward abdicated so he could marry Wallis Simpson, a divorcee. Bertie became king. George VI and Elizabeth became Queen Consort. Their coronation was held on the 12th of May 1937. Becoming king put a huge strain on Bertie, but Elizabeth remained a steadying and supporting force for the king. As king and queen, they made an international trip to France to increase the Anglo-French solidarity as Nazi Germany was becoming increasingly aggressive in their international relations. The couple also went to the USA and Canada to boost support in the event of a potential war with Germany. During the Second World War, the King and Queen remained in England, living in Windsor Castle. Initially unpopular when visiting affected areas of London during the war, when Buckingham Palace was bombed, Elizabeth felt she could look the people in the face. Elizabeth was also given revolver training. After the war, the royal family visited South Africa in 1947. They postponed their trip in 1948 to Australia and New Zealand as the king's health was deteriorating. In 1951 and 1952, Elizabeth and her daughters did most of the public engagements for the king. On the 6th of February 1952, months after the king had received treatment for his lung cancer, the king died. At the age of 52, the queen was widowed. To differentiate between the new queen and the old queen, both named Elizabeth, the older of the two went by the title of the Queen Mother, or as she was affectionately known by the public, the Queen Mum. Devastated by her husband's sudden death, she moved to Scotland, finding the countryside like a breath of fresh air, and helping her to cope with her husband's sudden death. Eventually, she returned to public duties, keeping busy and being a supportive hand for the new queen, her daughter. While Queen Elizabeth II went on tour of the Commonwealth in 1953 and 1954, Elizabeth acted as regent and also looked after her grandchildren. Elizabeth bought the Castle of May, a run-down castle that was in need of extensive work. Every year she would go there in August and October. Like most members of the British royal family, she also adored horse racing and owned a number of winning horses. During her life, Elizabeth had a number of bouts of cancer, managing to survive each attack. In 1966, she was diagnosed with colon cancer, and in 1984 with breast cancer. For both, she received treatment. The Queen Mother was one of the most long-lived members of the British royal family. In her final years, she continued to work, last attending a public engagement at the recommissioning of HMS Ark Royal on the 22nd of November 2001. In December 2001, Elizabeth fractured her pelvis after a fall, but insisted on attending her husband's 50th memorial service in February 2001. Her daughter Margaret passed away on the 9th of February 2002, only 3 days later. Despite being quite frail at this point, she attended her daughter's funeral. Over the next few weeks, Elizabeth's health began to fail, and she passed away in her sleep on the 30th of March 2002 with her daughter Elizabeth by her side. Her funeral was held on the 9th of April 2002. The Queen Mother is survived by her daughter Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning monarch in British history, her 6 grandchildren, her 12 great-grandchildren, and numerous numbers of great-great-grandchildren.